Hello and welcome to Miniature Realms, and welcome to my project vlog for the 10mm Wars of the Roses project that I'm doing. If you haven't watched the project vlog 1, it's probably worth watching that now. I'll just pop a little link in. If you don't, you might be a little bit confused what I'm going on about. But essentially, I'm into the second stage now. So my second order from Pendraken arrived. So my men-at-arms, my dismounted knights, so to speak, they arrived, and the extra bowmen that I needed in order to do my mixed bill and bow units. And I've been organising them out into little baggies, really ready to paint, so I can just pick them up. So if I want to do a bill and bow unit, I need one bag of bill, 2 bag of bow, and they're already organised to go. I take those away, and that's a little project, and that's how I'm going to work through them. I think in total, once I've done all of the commanders and the artillery and things, there's probably going to be about 65 little bags for the initial sweep, I imagine. And I think I've got probably about 58 of them here or something like that. So they're all labelled up. These are my men-at-arms. I'm going to have some men-at-arms units which will be standard size, 3 bases. I do have a couple that are only small, only 2 bases, and that's just down to the number of miniatures I have, but I think it also gives me a little bit of variety as well. I think I'll probably put the smaller men-at-arms unit in the rearward, so the third battle, the reserve essentially, was normally a reserve, because they're often slightly less strong, less experienced, maybe more underpowered or something. So I'm not just going to sit here with a bag or loads of baggies on the desk. I'll pop a little image on the screen now, that will show you my sort of initial organisation of the armies. But I've been doing a little bit of research. I've been reading the Freezing Water Productions Battle of Tewkesbury book, and that's a really nice book. It's so short, and it's given me so much information. It's definitely, I feel, a book that's perfect for wargamers, in the same way that Osprey is fantastic for wargamers as well. The Osprey Tewkesbury book is brilliant, and it covers more than you'd think. It covers the Battle of Barnet as well, and it always does the setting, the scenes, the bit of history leading up to it and things. But the Battle of Tewkesbury book, that's a lot more basic, and it's more of a discussion on previous sources and things as well, which is really, really interesting. But it's given me a good start in a way of starting to organise my armies, which is the most important thing, because I like to delve into the history around the project and read more and more, but while I'm also really excited and want to start building and painting, and one of the first things I do when I start a new wargaming project is try and work out what I need to buy, what I need to collect, and that's just the way I work. And in many ways you think, well, no, do your research first, do all your reading, and then make your purchase. But I really do like to crack on both things at the same time. So the Freezing Water Production book is fantastic, and I know they do them for lots of other battles as well. So if you are looking at a project and you haven't picked up one of those, I would really, really recommend it. So initial kind of, I say, bullet point notes on the formation of the armies and how I'm organising them. So my first purchases were to pretty much have equal forces, and then I'm going to go back with a sort of a second run, and add in the little flavour bits, so the bits to the Lancastrian army that maybe relate to French mercenaries and things like that, and just kind of add those little extra units in that may give it a little bit more flavour and give it the balance of the historical battle, as far as we know. We would say, as I mentioned in the first video, it's pretty vague at times. So the Yorkist army, Edward's army, you're looking at 5,500 to 6,000 men, of which it was reported, you look at that, 3,500 archers, 800 men-at-arms, 1,200 billmen, some hobilars, the light cavalry, prickers, depending on what you want to call them. Some handgunners were mentioned in one of the texts, so I don't know how many that would be. I might be tempted to pick a bag of those up. Once you get 30 in a bag, so we'll probably have a few left over, but maybe a small unit of handgunners, or maybe even a tiny unit, just one base or something like that, just to add that little bit of flavour. Maybe there's some mercenary handgunners left over from Burgundian ones left over from when Edward brought them over when he came back into power. And then it said in the Freezy Water book, and I think a lot of this is taken from original text, but it's 100 or so men with artillery men with a large number of artillery pieces. Now, that seems like it could be a lot. Now, nothing compared to the amount of artillery I've bought, I'm sure, but I want to do a little bit more digging around how many guns each side may have had, and how that would work out on the table in context with the amount of miniatures I have here. And that's important. I'll come back to that in a moment. But then also have the leaders, which is quite handy as well. And then that Freezy Water Productions book has a muster, and essentially it's a sort of list of like 70 or 80 lords and nobles and named people that were at the battle. It doesn't tell you what men they were commanding, whether they were commanding any, but all you know is whether they're Yorkist or Lancastrian. But it does give you lots of lords' names and things. So when you start wanting to put individual liveries or add characters to your bill and bow units or your knight units, and you've got your miniature at the front, and you want to have a particular flag or add something a little bit of flavour in, you can go and pick a lord or a noble, and you can work out that they were definitely at the battle, and paint them up in that way. That's not going to be my first thought. I'm going to start from the top down. So you've got the leaders of the three battles. So the vanguard for Tewkesbury was the Duke of Gloucester. And then the mainward, so your centre battle, was Edward himself with his brother George, the Duke of Clarence. I was keeping an eye on him still after his recent change of allegiances. So that's cool. You're going to have two sort of big hitters on the same base there, which gives some nice modelling opportunities. I may well want to do a separate George Duke of Clarence base if I want to play other games when he's not on the same leadership base as his brother. And then the rearward was William Lord Hastings, John Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk again. So there you got a double up there. These miniatures aren't particularly expensive. Especially if you're just picking up a few characters here and there. So I'm more than happy to produce bases designed for Tewkesbury, and then in the future do separate commanders bases for some of these commanders to be on their own if I want to play other battles. That's not a problem at all. In fact, it'd be a nice way of revisiting projects when the project's pretty much done, but I get the urge to play some more Wars of the Roses games, and what do I need? Well, I need to paint up another unit of knights, and I want this character and this character and this character. It just gives me mini projects to delve back into the period, so I'm looking forward to that in the future. They also had a small reserve of mounted spears. These are reported to have been moved out onto the flank at one point, but we won't go into the battle too much right now. Then the Lancastrian side, you're looking at 6,000 men, so very, very much equal. 3,000 to 4,000 archers, again, very similar. 2,000 men at arms and billmen, so that's just those numbers rolled in together. So you're looking at identical numbers almost there. Some artillery, now, I don't know what that means, so this is why I want to delve into that a little bit more. And then French mercenaries, and again, it's about how to represent those on the table. So the vanguard was Duke of Somerset himself. The mainward was Prince of Wales. So he was there in nominal command, as you would say, but it was really Wenlock that was in command of the mainward, and also John Langstrother, Prior of St John, was there as well. So three sort of big characters that I can look up standards and liveries and things there to put on that base. And the rearward was John Courtney, Earl of Devon. So the Earl of Devon. So I've got my three main bases planned for each side, and then what I'm going to do for each of the individual bill and bow and the men-at-arms units, I'm going to look at other main characters that I might want to have in the armies, as I mentioned earlier. I know that it mentions a few notable ones for the Yorkist side. So we have Walter Devereux, Lord Ferrers of Chartley, John Lord Howard, Lord Blount, Lord Mountjoy, and John Lord Cobham, and those were all present with Edward at Barnet. So they were regarded, they didn't die at Barnet, so they were, it's been assumed that they would still be with the army, so they would be prominent people. So I would probably cover those first for the Yorkist side. I might do a little bit more reading before I look at those for Lancaster, and then after that for more and more units, and I can add more and more. Anyway, there's a lot of rambling, but what you see on the screen there is kind of a basic layout. So there's the three battles for each side, and then in each battle, as a starting purchase, there's two bill and bow units and a man-at-arms units. Now under Rick Priestley's sort of guidance or recommendations in his army list, it says, you know, minimum of 4 units per battle, per division. So some of those would have a artillery, so a gun or so, and that would take it up to the minimum of 4. Another one may have handgunners, another one may have some of the light cav, etc, etc. As you can see, I've already got some of those models, so I've pretty much got 2 full playable armies. 3 battles each with the minimum of 4 units without purchasing any extra, but I also want to add a little bit more flavour. And I can fill those out, and just by doing it and what I've got, I can play a version of the Battle of Tewkesbury just with those 3 relatively small battles on each side. And because we don't know enough detail or lots of detail about what were in the armies, as long as the percentage balance is just about right in terms of numbers, you can play the game, and I can come back and I can completely double the amount of miniatures and still play Tewkesbury. So I'm not going to do that. I think I want this to be a project that's manageable, but I will add things to in the future. But I'll add a little bit of flavour to each of these, each of the battles. So I'll probably pick up some handgunners, as they mentioned. I'll look at some French mercenaries, so maybe I'll have to do some bit more research and find out what they may have consisted of. It'd be nice to have some long spears or pikes, just as a different style of unit, maybe some crossbows or handgunners themselves. And I need to be what other cavalry, so maybe put one battle can have some light cavalry on each side, and then I've got the separate light cavalry for Edward, just to give it a little bit of flavour. But I'll take it up to about the plan is to take it to obviously 4, maybe 5 individual units for each of those battles, and that's probably it. And just work through and get them painted essentially. So the fairly balanced armies makes it a fairly good game to play if you want to introduce someone to the game. It's fairly battle, but a little bit of some slight differences on one side or the other, and it just makes it an all-round project and 2 nice starter armies. Now if I want to go and fight Towton or something like that, I'm going to need a lot more miniatures to make it feel like the size of the battle it was, but the size of Tewkesbury was still sizable enough that I believe that, you know, the collections here give you a really, really nice balance. And I've got some, you know, I might add a couple of extra units so I can do other things, so there's a unit of heavy cavalry each side, just little bits and bobs like that. But essentially the layout of these armies here is perfect for any ongoing campaigns and things I want to do. Anyway, but that's not all I've done, so we'll just clear this stuff off the desk, and we'll let me show you what else I've been working on. And here we are. You'll see that I've done a test unit of Bill and Bow, and I'll zoom in and give you a closer look at those in a moment, and I'll put some images on the screen as well. Before I show you those, let's talk a little bit about flags. So in vlog number 1, I mentioned that I bought the 15mm Freezy Water flags. Obviously these are 10mm miniatures, and I'm a little bit concerned about the size of them. I want to just use these. I was sort of suggested by David Lancaster himself that as long as I'm doing it for myself, that reproducing these in a larger or a smaller size would have been fine. So that's one option. Wargames Designs has come back to me, and they are releasing their 10mm range at the moment as well, but they're going to be coming out quite slowly, and I'm not sure they're going to have everything I need, but I will look into those. I'll probably order some in the future. And then I have my little sheet from Pendragon, which is great. They just don't have the depth of scope that I really need for this. I mean, when you look at the overall standards there, that looks like Richards. I think the bore is Richards, so we're looking at Bosworth there, I think, rather than anything else. So, which is the biggest Wars of the Roses battle? So if you're going to produce a sheet, why not? I say biggest, most well known to those outside of Wars of the Roses, sort of wargaming and historians, etc., etc. So I'm a little bit kind of torn about what to do. Now, you see I've taken one flag off here just to put on there to cover a little bit of a look. But if you look at the sizing, they're a little bit bigger, but they're not so significantly bigger that I believe that it's a major issue. You can even see the cutout hole if I place it over another one of those. There's not that much to it. And I've been holding up the packets of these alongside my painted miniatures. I actually think that these flags are going to be fine. yes, they're a little bit bigger, but they'll stand out really nice on the battlefield as well. So I'm tempted just to go with the 15mm ones and be done with it, because I think these Freezy Water ones are fantastic. I really do love the range. But if I'd love some thoughts and some comments on that before I make a final decision. I haven't glued this flag on here, and the other bit comes up, and there's a question that came up only as I was sort of cutting this out. Is that so? This is a build unit that I've painted with mostly with the mixed colours, but there are quite a few guys that will have Edward's livery colours on because they're fighting in his army, and I've also added a few that are similar but with black and red rather than the blue and red for Lord Cobham. Because Cobham's going to be the first non-main character that I'm going to do in the army, and he's going to be portrayed actually on a unit of men-at-arms, so foot knights, that will be my next little bit of painting for these. And I thought that would say that he'd brought these bill and bow with him as well, and hence the mix of some guys in his livery, some in Edward's. And it's what flag to put on here. So you could put Cobham's, I suppose, but I thought I'd probably save that for his men-at-arms base. And I don't think he's on this flag sheet, but I do have Cobham's from Freezy Water. And then I thought, well, let's find Edward's. So I've got Edward's flag on there, but that's not his livery flag, I believe. So someone who's very knowledgeable, please, Martin, if you watch him, help. I'll message you anyway, probably. But if you are a standard bill and bow unit and you're fighting, you came with Lord Cobham, but you're fighting, you've got mixed kind of liveries because you're fighting for Edward. What flag would you be holding? So I can understand that Knights of Edward would maybe have this, or maybe that would be he'd have mixed standards on his base, so he'd have his overall standard, so your longer standard like this, which I've got as well, and then you've got your heraldry flags, but you've got your livery flags as well, I believe. I think that's a third design. I'm not sure that Freezy Water do them, or I haven't seen them around as much, or I haven't looked for my packets enough, because I've got them all sitting next to me. So what is right? Is that the right flag to have? Would that be the right thing? So there's a question for you. I'm going to go away and do my own research on this. I'm not being lazy. I only finished these last night. I'm recording this video the following morning, and it's just something that sprung to mind when I was putting on there. But I know I'm unlikely to use many of the Pendragon ones, and it's a cheapish flag sheet. And I wanted to have a flag on there for when I took pictures and showed you guys. So I thought, well, at least I'll stick Edwards on there, because it's got some level of correctness, but even if it's not right. Right, anyway, let's cut away from me rambling on and let's have a close look at the miniatures. And here we are. So, because there's 3 bases, and I wanted to sort of get the effect of how the units are going to look, because this is quite important to me. I thought I'd show you with them all lined up, so I've precariously balanced everything, so hopefully nothing falls over. I will spin it round on the usual painting handle that I do for my videos. But so I really wanted to kind of create what Martin's done with his army. I love the way the army looked. I think if I not only changing the scale, but then just basing everything very ranked up tightly like a Warmaster army, I think I'd have lost what I found I really liked about the project, what inspired me about what Martin was doing with this as a Wars of the Roses Hail Caesar version of the game, so to speak. And I really liked the way he had these mixed bill and bow units that appealed to me. It's not going to appeal to every sort of historical purist, but I really like the way that simplified the game. And I also liked just the way it looked on the table. And then I liked his bases, and I liked the way they weren't all ranked up. There was action, there was story in his bases, and that's a lot harder to do at 10mm. But by having unusual numbers, so I've got 8 on my units of bill, but they're still mixed around with the standard at the back there, and I'm having 7 archers on each of my bow units, and again that's just to help create an uneven approach, and I'm just really desperate not to put them in 2 ranks. Obviously with my epic ACW stuff, that's ranked up, and that makes sense for that kind of warfare. But this, I thought, Yeah, the archers are kind of in rows when they're firing, but they're also moving around a little bit, picking up the next arrows and getting into position and things. So, and sometimes they're going to be classed as fighting as well. So they've all got blades, and the models have got little buckler type shields and things. So, and they are supposed to represent the army all getting stuck in at some point. That's the whole idea of having these mixed bill and bow units. So that's what I've come up with, really. I like the overall effect. If you look too closely, there's obviously lots of little corners cut and mistakes and things like that. But it's, at the end of the day, they're 10mm models, and I want to produce them fairly quickly. So it was black, grey, and then white through the airbrush Zenithal, and then a white dry brush. Similar process that I've done for the Epic ACW. Those of you who've seen those, if you're really interested, you can look at my painting video for the Confederate troops. I will do a painting video for these as well, so but that might be for 2 or 3 weeks, I imagine. And then I've used contrast for an awful lot of it. In fact, pretty much all of it gone in contrast colours. They're very easy to control, contrast paints. So doing the haft designs on the shirts and things was quite easy to control, because I've gone over a Zenithal highlight. It's already given you some pre-shading there. And then I've gone and done the rest of the base coat. So there's lots of colour on there, all contrast paints. Then I did the flat metals, put in the skin, just again contrast washes. So I was a basic level for all of them, and these are on sort of lollipop sticks and tongue depressors. And then I based them, partly because they're so small it's impossible not to handle them when you're basing them, and contrast paints do rub off a little bit. And yes, I could varnish, but I didn't really want to varnish too much. It changes the colour, especially of the metallics, and I didn't want to do this afterwards. So I've done the base levels of all of them, then I've glued them on the bases in the positions I wanted, got the basing material down and let that dry, and then I've come back and tied it up and done highlights. So there's maybe one highlight on top of each colour, but some I've missed, some very, very tiny bits. But also, because I'm already on the bases, I'm only highlighting areas you're seeing as well, so I'm actually reducing my workload, which is quite a sensible thing to do. When you've got this many small miniatures to paint, you can't spend an hour on each of these tiny miniatures when you've got absolutely hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And that means I can do a bill and bow unit like this in a couple of hours, so that's an evening's work. And I'll bulk do them at some point, and I'll probably manage to cut that time right down to an hour or so. I was very much learning as I went along, so if I timed it next time, it may well be even a lot quicker. But I can, if I can get one of these down to an hour or so, or 90 minutes or something like that, so I've got a bit of time in the evening, I'll put a podcast on, watch a couple of YouTube videos, etc., and get one of my bill and bow units done. Before I know it, the whole armies will be done. So I'm quite pleased with the way it looks as a mass effect. I'll just show you a couple of spin round shots on the painting handle. There you go, just a quick spin around here, because I've already been talking about them for a while, but you get the idea. Nice and mixed up, contrast, a little bit of highlighting here or there, especially the going back with the metals for a second highlight, just to make them pop and sort of stand out. And it doesn't maybe make them as grim and as messed up as that I would do it at a larger scale, but because of the nature of this scale anyway, they still look a bit like that. So you get that effect naturally, because it's really, really basic. There's no advanced techniques in here. It is very much a bit of a vision of what I want the army to look like, and it's shrinking. As I keep shouting out Martin, but it's where the inspirations come from. Just wanted to get what he'd done and shrink it to a smaller scale, but pretty much keep everything else as intact as possible. And yes, I can play War Master with these because the base sizes are right, but they don't look like War Master armies. They're not all ranked up in the way the strips would be, and I'm glad these aren't strips, if I'm honest with you. I think it looks better in terms of what I'm trying to achieve. Don't get me wrong, if someone brought out plastic or beautifully 3D printed strips, and I could paint them as strips, then I may well go for a different style of army, but I'm overall happy with this. And some bow. Again, you get the idea. I won't spend too long on each of these because I torture you to death with them, but I quite like the way they're all sort of mixed up, different positions. Generally the guys that are running at the back Maybe he was running to pick up something he dropped. I don't know. You get the idea. And the final base. So it'd be nice to get this. I know I talked about 2 hours. I think it took. I think I can get it down to 1.5. I'd love to get it down to an hour. If I could cut these down to an hour, it'd be great. But that would be me racing, I think. But overall, I'm happy with the tester concept. I think it's going to match the vision that I have for the game and the armies that I want to create. Shouldn't be a project that takes too long. It may well end up being finished before some of my others, just because I think it's probably the simplest out of all of them. It's definitely going to be finished before the American Civil War one, just because it's a lot smaller. American Civil War one, I will definitely get to the point where I'll be able to play some pretty large games, but still have a massive pile of stuff to paint as well, just because of the amount of miniatures that I have, more than I'm ever going to need. Whereas this is, if I wanted to play some other games, might be something I needed to add to in the future. But I'm very, very happy with it, the way it's going. I'm very excited for the project, and I want to crack on and keep doing it so I can explore others as well. So thank you very much for watching. I will be back soon, I'm sure, with a project vlog number 3, probably once I've painted my first unit of men-at-arms. I've ordered the heraldry and liveries guide from Freezy Water as well, so that will help me. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that when that arrives. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.